Lifeboat Live. We have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck.
Hey everybody, I'm Captain Tommy Scoville and you're on the lifeboat. Welcome everyone, glad you're all here. And by that, I mean I'm glad you all are here. Tell you what, just one quick one before we get rolling. There is nobody that is trying to remain sober and live their best life who does not belong on the lifeboat. There is no one that is trying to fight the good fight on a daily basis in a struggle that never stops, that does not belong right where they are, right here on the lifeboat. So never question that. Never question that. And everybody, sorry, some cat had something in her eye. It is Tuesday night. You know what that means, people? It means that more than likely tomorrow night we are doing Wednesdays with Niall. The best way to do these things is always to put somebody on the spot with the entire crew watching, and it makes it so much more difficult for that person to then say, no, I'm busy, especially if they're in the comment section. So hopefully tomorrow night we'll be doing Wednesdays with Niall, and everybody will be here. We'll be doing that voodoo that we do here on the lifeboat. Today's subject matter, if you saw the heading, I haven't talked about this one in a long time. It used to be probably one of the main focuses here on the lifeboat. But, you know, when you do a show every day, you start feeling like you're just hammering something to death. And you get to the point where you feel like, you know what, boy, we go over that a lot. And then you sort of start to branch out in different directions and do different subjects. And then they sort of become pet subjects, you know the drill. Aw. And from that point, you know, you start going back and looking at some of the things, but this one is a big one for me. And with everything that's going on in the world, you know, and we won't get into all of it, but we touched on this a couple of times in the last few shows where we were talking about victimhood and, you know, all of the different things that sort of go along with that. And I believe that when you take responsibility for the things that you've done in your life, is when healing truthfully starts to happen. And I am of the firm belief that you do that by owning your past, not by pushing it off onto other people. And I think that in recovery, excellent. So tomorrow night will be Wednesdays with Niall. So please make sure you tune in, people, because those are always a lot of fun. I really enjoy that. Missed it last week. We're not going to miss it this week. So tomorrow night, Wednesdays with Niall. So people, it really comes down, in my opinion, that it's an epidemic among people in recovery that they push off so much of their responsibility for what they did as addicts onto other people. And I think, you know, we've talked about this many times in the past, but if you're new to the lifeboat, you may not have heard this before. They have a vested interest in making sure that you don't blame yourself for the things that you've done. You don't blame yourself for your own addiction. You don't blame yourself for all of the the devastation that we leave in our wake. Because if by some chance they get you to take ownership of that, especially early on in sobriety, very oftentimes it drives you back to your drug of choice or alcohol or whatever substance you're using, right? You start feeling like you're so overwhelmed with the things that you've done that you can't live with it. And the inability to live with the things that we've done is really an issue for a lot of people. It's an issue for everyone, right? Who's fighting the good fight. It really is, because let's face it, people, in our past, we destroyed a lot. That's sort of the nature of addiction, right? There are very few people that can say that they had a long battle with drugs or alcohol that didn't leave burned out bridges and houses and carcasses and, you know, everything along the way. Because the only important thing in our life for the longest period of time was drugging ourselves to the point of feeling numb, avoiding all of the things that, air quotes, normal people have to deal with. You know, tax time's rolling around, and I've been dealing with my taxes, and there's a whole lot to deal with this time because I had my identity, you know, sort of ripped off last year, and there's a lot that went along with that that has created just a nightmare of things that I have to deal with in taxes. And it's really odd to talk to people who prepare taxes, and they say, well, you know, how about your tax returns for the last 6 years? I don't have any. Okay. Well, what's the deal with that? Well, I was away, and you know, where I was working, I was making 11 cents an hour, so they weren't taxing it. And you know, you explain that whole thing, and they say, well, what about taxes before that? Well, I just didn't pay them. So you didn't work? No, I just didn't pay them because I lived that life that got in the way of getting high. That got in the way of drugging my feelings. I would have had to come up for air in order to do things like file my taxes or anything else that enabled me to act like a human being. Well, I didn't act like a human being. All I did was drug myself, and I didn't care about anybody else's feelings. I didn't care about what I left in my wake, providing I could continue to dull my senses and dull my emotions and dull my pain and all of the other things that normal people feel. So as you start to come through that, you get all of these people that say, well, it was your bad childhood. You know, if you had, you know, mom had breastfed you, or mom hadn't breastfed you, or, you know, your uncle was nicer to you, or your first girlfriend in high school didn't jilt you at the prom. I mean, they really try to create a whole hierarchy of crap that this can all be put off on that has nothing to do with you. And I bought into that junk for a minute. I mean, there was a time in my life where I was groping for a good excuse so that I didn't have to take credit for all of the things that I had done. And for me, and this is me, people, you do what you do. But for me, healing started when I owned it, when I said, this is my responsibility. And I didn't own it in private. I was very vocal in my ownership of the things that I had done. And I continue to be very vocal. If I go through all of the ways that things have happened to me that weren't great in the last 20 to 30 years, I am BSing myself if I don't take full responsibility for even the things that other people were doing for me. I'm not saying that's got to be you people, but that's me. And the reason is every time somebody jilted me or every time somebody walked away from me, as opposed to concentrating on the reason that that person walked away, it's just so much easier to concentrate on the fact that they did walk away. Well, this person abandoned me at one of the worst times in my life. I mean, I was going through this. You know, I had someone walk out on me during a major illness. You know, that's no. They should have walked out on me way before that. I was not somebody that you could live with. Hell, I wasn't somebody you could be friends with, much less live with. Because if you were my friend, I was going to try to get your money. I was going to try to get you drugs. I was going to try to get your girl so maybe I could get her money. I mean, that really was the person that I had become. And that ownership was the start of the healing process for me. When I took responsibility and said, this is the guy that I was, that's when the healing process began. And I see waves of people in sobriety who can't do that. And I think a lot of it is because of things like therapy. A lot of times we go to therapists and I mean, I remember sitting down, even now, the therapist I got now is awesome. She really is. She's amazing. But the previous 5 or 6, first question every time, let's start talking about when you were a kid. No, I assure you, that's not why I did drugs. Now, I'm not saying that's everybody, but that's what you got to figure out. You got to take responsibility for the things that are something you need to take responsibility for. There are going to be things that are painfully obvious that are not your fault. If you had a parent that beat you when you were 6, there's nothing a 6-year-old does to deserve being beat. Right? Nothing. But as you grow and you get to the age where you can start to make decisions for yourself, at that point, you got to start taking some responsibilities for the things that you did. And one of the examples that I love to use, because it's a great one, it really is. I was incarcerated. I think everybody knows that. Because of things that I did, primarily bank robbery, but some gun running and some other larceny, kind of larcenous kind of stuff. I ended up behind bars. And because I wanted to shorten my sentence and because I wanted to find out who I was, and because I really got to a point where I just wanted to be sober and I didn't want to be the same jackass that I had been my entire life, I attended every single class that you could attend. I'm not exaggerating. If there was a class to try to figure out a way to live a better life, I signed up for it. Even if that class didn't help me get out early or there was matriculation for nothing, I still signed up for it because I was in this, I need to make me a better person mode for, close to a decade. I got really into that. But I used to be blown away. I would sit in a room and they would go around the room and they'd say, tell us your name, your drug of choice, and what you're in prison for. And the person would say, my name is Bob, and my drug of choice was methamphetamine, and I'm in prison because my wife called the FBI and told them that I had a lab in the basement. And then the next guy would say, I'm so-and-so, and my drug of choice was cocaine, and I'm in prison because the 2 guys I was working with got caught, and then they told on me. And it got to me, and I was like, you know what? I guess I'm the only cat in here that's guilty. I'm in prison because I robbed banks to get drugs. Who cares how I got caught? I'm in prison because I did something wrong and I got punished for it. But I'm not kidding you. 40 guys in a room and I didn't see one dude own it. I didn't see one guy take responsibility for where he was. And I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything else. I'm just trying to keep it real. I'll bet you any amount of money you want, every one of them is back in. And if they're not, they're on their way. Because you can't build a new life if you're bull crapping yourself on the last one. If the last chapter of your life is absolute just fecal matter in terms of your story for why you were using or why you were doing this, you want to lie to the world, that's completely your business. And I got no right to tell you otherwise. But when you're lying to yourself, you're not going to have a base to build any kind of a new life on. You got to own it. You got to own the things that you did. Now, does that mean that people didn't screw you over? Of course not. I mean, if that dude's wife called the cops and told him that he had a meth lab in the basement, that's a very unfortunate situation. And she had an absolute hand in him going to prison. You'd be stupid to think otherwise. Of course, if he didn't have a meth lab in the basement, it really wouldn't have mattered what that phone call was, right? Hey, I got a guy here that isn't doing anything wrong, but I hate him. I mean, that doesn't land you in prison. And this is a huge example, right? It's hyperbole for the purpose of making you understand what I'm talking about. Every day, it's the same thing. Well, I'm having a really difficult time not drinking because my ex-wife is doing X, Y, and Z, and this is causing me. No. You're having a tough time because the decisions you are making are keeping you intoxicated. You're having a tough time because the decisions you're making are keeping you high. I don't care what is going on in your life. That's the 5%. The 95% is what you're going to choose to do with it. And I promise you, if you just say, well, I'm going to BS myself on everything that I did in the last 40 years, but starting today, I'm going to be real honest going forward, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. It's building a really beautiful building on a sand foundation. It doesn't matter what you start to do to try to make yourself a better individual and to try to start really building yourself as somebody sober. If you build that on a sand foundation, it's going to tip over. My humble opinion, people, is that it all starts with ownership of the things that you've done in your past, and you can't own it in a closet. I'm sorry, you just can't. I mean, it's one thing to say, this is who I am and this is what I did, but for the love of God, I'm not going to tell anyone else that. Now, do you got to go on a channel and tell the entire world? You don't. You don't. I do. I mean, I do. This is working beautifully for me. Taking ownership of the things that I've done in my past and telling the entire world about it has really had an amazing effect on my life. I'm not suggesting that everybody does that. I'm not. But I'll tell you something. If there's somebody in your life that you love and you're BSing them, that's a sand foundation. If there's somebody in your life and you say to them, you know what? Yeah, I was on drugs for 20 years. And let me tell you a big yarn about why I was. Let me make you actually feel sorry for me for being a drug addict because of all of the crap I had to overcome, which was the reason I was sticking needles in my arm. Because people do that. In fact, I would say a lot of people do that, right? A lot of people hedge their bet, right? When they tell the story of what's going on in their life, they've got just that last vestige of BS that they refuse to let go of. Like, I'm going to tell you, no, I was a raging drug addict. Absolutely, I was. And I was out of line and I'm ready to get sober. But have I got a great excuse for why I was doing all this? Now, seriously, you got to hear it. Give me about 15, 20 minutes. And I am going to spin just an incredible yarn about all of the justifications that I had for doing dope for 20 years. If you are holding on to those justifications, that's a sand foundation. Make no mistake. That is the sand foundation. Now go ahead and build you a beautiful building out of there and watch what happens. The way that this works and the way that I've seen it work, not just in my life, people. I mean, with all due respect, I'm the captain of the lifeboat. I'm watching a lot of people get sober, and I'll take honestly, I'm not taking any credit for anybody's sobriety. I'm not. But I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I don't interact with a crap load of people who are in the process of getting sober. And the ones that really are building rock solid futures, the people that are really seem to be just leaping ahead, all have one thing in common. They're never, ever trying to BS you about why they use drugs. It may not even come up ever. They may not share it with you because there's no point. You hear things like, you know what, I was using for 15 years because I liked getting high. And I got to a point where I felt like I had to drug my emotions because I just couldn't handle life. So I just continued to get high. And in the process of doing it, let me tell you about some of the people that I hurt. The people that I really see who are killing it usually spend a lot of time telling you about the damage that they did. Now, you could draw whatever conclusions you want from that. Maybe that jumps out at you that people who remind themselves of where they were are real likely not to go back there. I don't know. That to me makes a lot of sense. It really does. Am I right? I don't know. But it makes a lot of sense to me that when you really own it, when it really becomes a part of the fabric of who you are, then you're less likely to visit that place again. For real, I'm not going back. I'm not. I don't like the person I was. I don't like the things that I did to people who were good people. I burned a lot of really, really good people. I burned a lot of dirtbags too. I mean, I didn't just seek out great people to rip off. I ripped off everybody. But in the process of doing that, I ripped off people that I loved, people I hated, people I didn't know. I just was that guy. And you know whose fault it was? this guy. For real. Now, the one entity that I don't have a problem dragging into this is the drug. For real. I mean, while taking ownership, I can tell you that there are very few things out there on this planet that are better engineered to turn you into a complete and utter piece of crap than heroin. It's awesome for doing dirt to who you are and turning you into somebody that you were not designed to be. It is a wonderful, wonderful drug. For real. You want to see the salt of the earth turn into what I used to be? Watch somebody start spiraling out of control on opiates and watch them, spin out of control to the point where they can't afford it anymore and start doing heroin, and you just will not believe what that person will become. Now, I've said so many times, there are people who lose their minds when I say this, but I'm going to say it again. I believe it's a disease. I believe addiction is a disease, but it is a disease of choice. If you just believe it's a disease, in other words, well, I was born with this and there was no way around it, right? I mean, there was nothing I could do. I came out of mom's womb, I was a heroin addict. So it was just a matter of time before I started using smack. That's not what I mean when I say that this is a disease. What I mean is you have a precursor. You've got some kind of a predestiny so that if you do end up doing this, you're going to end up a drug addict. And the example that I like to use, and if you haven't heard it, you're going to now. But the example that I like to use is diabetes. It comes in two flavors, one of which you're born with, right? The other is a disease of choice. If you have that predisposition to diabetes and you eat like a Viking 4 times a day, right? And you drink like there's no tomorrow, and your diet consists of 16 liters of Coca-Cola a day, you can absolutely drive yourself into diabetes. And if you downbeat people, have a talk with my brother, Alan Valentine, who did that to himself and then got out of it. Like right now, his numbers are perfect because he's lost 130 pounds and he completely changed his lifestyle. No different than a drug addict, right? I was a good dude. Everything was gravy. And then I started doing opiates. And you know what? I could sit here and tell you a great story about how I started doing opiates. And you know what? It would sound real legit because I got injured and I started taking pills. My fault. My fault. There are tons of people that get injured and start taking pills who don't end up robbing banks and going to prison. I did that. That's me. Right? So it doesn't matter what started me on the pills. It's not part of the story. It's irrelevant. I hope you understand what I'm saying. But I believe wholeheartedly it's a disease. It's a disease of choice. Alan Valentine, I don't ever believe is going to be diabetic again because he doesn't live that lifestyle anymore. He is blessed in that he has gotten to a weight where none of the health trouble that Alan was suffering with for so long does he suffer with anymore. Funny how going from 340 pounds to 180 will do that to you. Funny how going from 6 grams of heroin a day to not doing any will have the exact same effect on an addict. Huh? Do you see the similarities there, people? Because they are thick. Now, the problem that people have is that when you call it a disease, they look at it like a get out of jail free card. Oh, he's just, yeah, it's a disease. He couldn't get you. No. Own it, but understand it. I mean, granted, we did this to ourselves, but 2 of us could have done the exact same thing side by side every single day. When I went to pump the brakes, I didn't have the capacity to do that. While someone else went to pump the brakes, I'm like, whoo, getting out of control, I'm not doing this anymore. If you have that predisposition to addiction, pumping the brakes gets a whole lot more difficult. Does it get impossible? Of course not. But it gets a whole lot more difficult. And then the longer that you continue to play with fire, the more that you get burnt. And unfortunately, pretty soon the entire freaking state is a brush fire. And everybody that you love is trapped in that same fire. And I think that that's really where a lot of this ownership comes in. You hear people say, yeah, I did a lot of dope. That was all my fault. My question I always 100% want to ask is, yeah, who did you hurt along the way? Seriously, share it with me. Pick 4 or 5 of your favorite, I really did this person wrong story. And if you can't rip 5 of them off at the top of your head really quick, you ain't owning it. if you have not taken the time to really think about the people that you have hurt. Now, there are going to be people who say right now, man, you do stuff like that, you're going to drive a person back to addiction. I think that that's a better solution than waiting 10 years, blaming other people, and then coming to the realization 10 years from now that it's your fault. Because that is a guaranteed relapse. Get it out of your system and do it the right way. It's the difference between starting to build a house right now on a big pile of sand or taking 5 or 6 months to build a ripping foundation, which you can build a high rise on, right? Build whatever you want on. So yeah, is it a tougher process? You betcha. You bet it is. But talk to the person who went through that process and did it correctly and get a look at what they've built in 4 years. And then go look at the person that started building on sand, who has to just continually rebuild. And I don't care how many times you rebuild. The thing's going to pitch to the left, and you're going to get a couple of things out there. We're going to get some props. We're going to bring in some engineers. We're going to do everything we can to keep this building so that it looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but it's continuing to stand. You know addicts like that? I guarantee you do. I guarantee you do. These are people who manage to get 4 or 5 months under their belt and they relapse. And then they get 4 or 5 months under their belt and then they relapse. And they get 2 or 3 months under their belt and then they relapse. You think I'm talking about other people? I'm talking about me. I did it for 3 decades. The difference between this version of me and every other attempt was ownership. Honestly, it was not to be nothing else, truthfully, people. I mean, it was always the same stuff. The difference is that I met somebody that just called me on it. You know, when I said, you know, they took my daughter from me. They took my daughter from me. They kicked her out of my life. He's like, so you decided to just do a crap load of heroin. Boy, you couldn't come up with a better excuse, could you? That's a good one. I bet you were loving that. Huh? That was a free pass to all the smack you ever wanted to do. And you weren't going to let anybody tell you any different, were you? And I just looked at him like, boy, this guy's a jerk. And he was. I promise you. But he was a jerk that did amazing things in getting me sober. You know, the reason that I am sitting in front of this camera today and talking to you is because of that guy. Unfortunately, we live in a society right now where, I don't know, everything is kind of considered mean, right? Everything is considered mean. We're eliminating things. We're canceling things because if it's a little mean, we're not going to do it. That's mean. There's no reason for that, right? Captain Hook, you heard this one? They're getting rid of Captain Hook from Disney because it's mean. It's mean to have a guy with a hooked hand because it's picking on all of those people. You know what, people? Inside of the sobriety game, there's no room for that crap. There's no room for that crap. You got to be able to say to somebody, BS, that's on you. Sorry, but that's the truth. If the people that care about you and really want to see you get sober, they're not going to let you play those games. They're not going to let you hedge your bet. They're not going to let you put all of the responsibility for your drug addiction on somebody else. You think that's going to fly? Build a house on sand and let me know how it works out. I'm telling you, people, and not because I'm a great guy or a genius or, you know, Nostradamus, but because I deal with a couple of thousand of you that talk to me all the time. I can hold my phone up right now and show you the number of emails that I got sitting and waiting. I talk to a lot of people in sobriety. I'd be willing to go out on a limb and say there are very few people out there that are talking to as many people in sobriety as I probably am. For real. What do you think the average counselor might have in their, 50? That's a big caseload for a counselor. 50 would be a lot. 50 would be a lot. At any given time, people, I got 100 and a half, maybe 200 and a half, 300 that are telling me exactly what's going on in their life. And I fire back to as many of them as I can. If ever I'm not getting back to you, there's probably 2 reasons. 1, I don't think you're about to relapse. And 2, it's just really a bit overwhelming. You know what I mean? There's 2 of us. So Mark's only got to worry about 1,575 people somewhere in there. And I just 1,575 that I got to worry about. And I'm not complaining. I swear to God, I'm not. I absolutely love this. I love every single bit of this process. I really do. But it's opened my eyes in ways that I just didn't think it would. You know, I thought that what Q did to me, I really thought was unique. And it's not. I mean, where we did it and how it transpired and the fact that he was black and I was white and we were in a federal prison, there's a lot of things about that process that were unique. But the techniques, they're the techniques that work for everybody. And the people that are killing it are owning it. I promise you, the people that are killing it are owning it. And the people that aren't are the people that aren't really getting it done. You know, it's as simple as a two-part system, people. Number one, you got to own your past. You got to take responsibility for all the crap that you did. And then number two, you do not dip your toe into the pool of sobriety. You jump in it. There's the other thing that I see on a regular basis that trips people up. And it's almost the same thing, people. It's almost caused by the exact same thing. See, when you don't really own your past, then you always feel like, maybe I'm really not as bad off. You know what I mean? Like you hear people say, I don't know that I'm an addict, but yeah, you do. You know you're an addict. But if you don't say you're an addict, well, then you kind of leave the door open for maybe just that once or twice a month where you're just going to have a couple of beers. Or if I'm really not an addict and I just say something like, well, I don't know that I was a junkie, but I was definitely using a little bit too much. Why would anyone say anything like that? For real. You want to know why? Because it leaves that door open. It leaves that door open. You know, in the back of your head, even if you're not acknowledging it, in the back of your head, you're leaving that door open for after about 3 more months of listening to this jackass with the hat, I'm going to be able to just party occasionally. You know, I'm going to be able to just occasionally go out, have a few beers, smoke a joint, or, do a line with a friend, but I'm not, I'm never going to go back to what I was. Oh, you're going to go back. I promise you, you're going to go back. And the scary thing, people, whether you realize it or not, is even while you're sitting here doing nothing, your addiction's growing. It's getting uglier. This is something that I have such a difficult time explaining to people that have never done dope. But think of your addiction as another human, right? This other human that wants to get high. Well, when you stop, he doesn't die. He does steroids. He works out. He does wind sprints, right? For real. He gets yoked. He gets bigger and bigger and stronger and uglier, which is not an issue if you don't ever talk to him again. But if you decide to get in a fist fight with him in 2 years, he's going to kick your can. People, when I relapsed after not this prison sentence, because this one I've managed to get it right, but after my previous prison sentence, when I relapsed, I had a decent amount of sobriety under my belt. But you would have thought, 7 grams of heroin would kill you. I mean, no question. A tenth of a gram of heroin would get me high. Within 2 weeks, I was back to 7 grams a day. Within 2 weeks, my addiction didn't slow down. It sped up. It was out there pumping iron, just waiting for the next shot. And I'll tell you something, when you come to grips with that and you understand that, it becomes a very, very sobering thought. It really does, right? I've given him 7 years to work out. You got any idea what he would be like if I let him out of his cage again? Not only would I be gone fast, people, and I would be gone fast, but I would be gone for good. I know for a damn fact, I don't have another one in me. I do not have another attempt at this. Not for me. And I'm not saying, Tommy told everyone they're going to die if they ever do it again. No. Tommy said he will die if he ever does this again. There's not a doubt in my mind. I don't have another attempt in me. Fortunately, I really feel like I got a handle on this. I have got a great set of tools. I've got a great group of people. And if you caught last night's show, I've got 2,300 people that have my back. And I come out here probably 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, and I own it. I talk. How are we doing? Am I still on there? Good. Good. God, what a terrible frozen picture of me, too. Could you not have gotten something a little nicer than that one? Was crazy.
Sorry, guys. I should have hopped in there. I was typing and Tommy was still talking, so I don't think they lost a whole lot there. So,
Okay, good.
So they just
okay, good.
they just seen you like
yeah, exactly. Really handsome screenshot there for for a little brief period of time. But no, this is this is really, people. I mean, these are the nuts and bolts that I have discovered. And when I talk about the fact that I'm not coming back, it isn't an arrogant thing. I really hope you understand that. You know, I'm not saying that's never going to happen to me again because I have overcome. No, I have really figured out the tools that it requires to stay sober. And I am not at all messed up about sitting in front of this camera and saying, I'm going in the wrong direction. Because it really is amazing what happens when you tell a couple of thousand people that you're in relapse. I'm not picking on anybody. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I love all of you. But you all freaked out the last time I said it. You did. And probably one of the best experiences ever for me. I mean, you want it to really hammer home just how much people care about you. All it required was, and I wasn't doing it for effect, people. I was relapsing. I was definitely heading in the wrong direction. What do we got here? Your past is not your potential. In any hour, you can choose to liberate the future. Damn, that's heavy. If that was 2 words shorter, it would be the world's greatest bumper sticker. But it would be a pretty long one. 7th, you are becoming a man of deep wisdom. And thank you, my brother. I appreciate it.
Yep.
But truthfully, people, it's not an arrogance thing. It's just a matter of, figuring out what the tools are, figuring out what it takes to remain sober. And I can say that, with no shadow of a doubt, I don't have a problem coming here and telling you that I'm screwing up. And when I do, there are just a lot of people that rally to my assistance really quickly. If you think that's because I sit in front of the camera, then you've just never tried it.
Yeah.
Because if you come here, I promise you're going to get the same response. If you come here and say, I feel like I'm slipping up and I'm going in the wrong direction, well, people are going to reach out to you. In the last 2 days, we had people on the lifeboat that I have never seen before on the lifeboat who left things in the comments section saying, if any of you ever need to reach out, right,
Yeah.
please do. Please do.
That just floors me every time that happens.
Yes, that, not just,
I mean, it
make you want to pump your fist in the air and yell, hell yeah, at the top of your lungs.
I mean, that's just case in point on owning it right there. I mean, to be honest, that person is owning it. It really is, and we got some new people in here too tonight. It's great, and it's like, me and Tommy have talked about that in the past. We really want everybody that's here to keep coming back, but we want new people too. And the reason why is because when new people do, they feel comfortable enough to talk. And that's where, how did we all meet? That same way. And it really is. And, and Holly, thank you for, Miss Hermit. You might don't know who Holly is. She's recommended the lifeboat to Phoenix is in here right now. I think they know each other. And somebody else was in here earlier. I was looking. I see Mark Webb's back. Danny Wood's here. Those are all nice to meet you guys. I just have to say. And there's been some really good comments from a lot of people here. I can't tell you how many because they just kept coming. I thought about jumping in and saying this stuff a couple times, but they were just happening so fast it wouldn't have made no difference. I had to just keep reading.
Right.
So that's why But no, guys.
Well, I saw a comment from Michelle where she said, I know how hard it is for your brother to quit. Meth is really a tough drug. People, if you've never caught the shows that we've done
Joe
on
Birdwell.
meth, I think they took one down and buried it. We did something to offend the big red button and they removed one of them. But that is a very unique substance. And I think that very often people don't really get an appreciation for how unique a substance methamphetamine is. It uses the chemicals in your brain that you would normally get on a day-to-day basis, but for normal stuff. And it floods your brain with it at such levels that unlike something like opiates or alcohol or something that's just sort of drugging part of your brain so that you feel a specific effect. This is taking all of the greatest designed emotional feelings of the human being and multiplying them by 1,000. So for that reason, when you quit, it's not just a matter of eliminating the substance. You've eliminated what it means to feel good. And
Yeah.
there is a phenomenon called anhedonia, right? And anhedonia is something that most people who quit meth have to get through. And it really means a complete and utter lack of emotion,
Yes.
not joy or happiness or anything else. It's emotion. I mean, you're left with a brain that says, oh, I'm not pumping any more of that out until you give me some of that white crystally stuff.
Exactly.
And that is really, really a difficult thing to overcome.
I hate to
Go ahead.
use this example, but it's the only thing I can really relate it to. You know, it's almost like this, and this is how I would explain it to people, that if you have ever, I mean, I don't even know if I want to say it like this or not, smoked weed enough that got you to a place where you were like stuck. You ever, I mean, has anybody ever experienced that where you just like were stuck and you didn't feel good, you didn't feel bad, but you didn't care? And that's what it for me. That's what it was like when I tried that the few times that I did, and it kind of is. And I would point people to Alan Ballantyne's interview and Joe Birdwell's. I think both of them they both used meth, didn't they? Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. You
Yeah. So we've got those. Those are real interviews for people that are new here. You guys should go back and check those out. Alan Ballantyne, he did 2 interviews, and so did Joe. Right? Didn't Joe do 2?
Yep. Yep. They both did 2 each.
And
they're really, you're right. Those are great examples, and both of them talked about that feeling after the drug was gone, where you're just, I mean, it's like you cannot get excited about anything, and that's such a difficult thing when you're trying to get sober, because for most people, we did a show called Find Your Passion, and for so many people, when you come out of a long-term addiction and you're able to identify something that just gets you fired up, it really is such a great tool to help you rebuild. And for people who abused meth for long periods of time, that is really a difficult thing to do, because even things that you used to get very excited about are like, nah, Yeah. But what I would say is that, and this is what Joe Birdwell and Alan Ballantyne both, got across in their interview, is that it's almost one of those fake it till you make it kind of things. Like, you have to force yourself. And there was a little bit of that with the opiates.
Yeah,
I remember.
I would say
I remember
that too.
when I was incarcerated, getting up and going and doing things that I was miserable doing. I ran a yoga class for people, and getting up and doing that every day, there was no joy in it at all, and it just sucked. But I had a guy there every day going, "You want to get right? You're going to go do this. And You're just going to continue to do it, and you're going to." And I remember the day. It was probably 2 or 3 months into it, where somebody said something during the class, and I got a chuckle.
Ain't that the best thing, dude?
Laughing.
Oh my
Yeah, and
God.
it just, all of it, I was like, man, this was fun. I had a good time doing this. And it's like everything else with sobriety. That's just that first brick. And once you can start laying bricks like that, you can build on them. Once you can prove that you can do something, then you can do it again. And once you feel that satisfaction and that passion, well, now you can go passion hunting. You know what I mean? Now you can go and start looking at the things that you used to do. But there is a period of time, especially with methamphetamine, where you just got to tough it out.
Let me say this too, Tommy, that
Sure.
when you guys get yourself to a point where you actually experience that for the first time, don't just kind of brush that away. Latch onto that. I mean, because what that's going to do is going to let you know that you can still feel. You still can. It's just your brain is healing. That's what it's doing. Remember, all those chemicals, that's the fake happiness, is how I describe it. And I was on Neurontin. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's a depression drug also, but they also use it for nerve pain, right? Neurontin.
Seizures. Yeah, they write it for a lot of stuff.
Is it gabapentin? Is that the actual?
It is gabapentin. Yeah, that's the chemical name for it.
But that particular drug made me numb. Okay? It made me exactly what Tommy was just saying. And to give you guys an example of how intense that can be for somebody that's like coming off of meth and experiencing this, I was really close to my grandfather. He passed away, and I didn't even cry. I mean, that is really where your brain goes, guys. That's a hard thing to get over. So when I say, when you belly laugh for the first time after you've been sober, man, you better take pictures, videos, whatever you've got to do to remember that, because that's going to be a huge tool in your belt. It's going to say, hey, you know, when you start feeling that way again, hey, I felt like that. I was okay that time. I wasn't on drugs, and I still felt that way. So it's possible. It lets you know it's possible. And that's kind of what I'm saying. So anyway,
No, and I think I really think you're right. The and it's something that, again, it's a matter of toughen the way through. And I mean, truthfully, it says a lot about, you know, there was a comment, I think Chi left it, and it was a reference to Care Bears. So, you know, they all had a different thing on their chest. And
Yeah.
there really is something to that with the lifeboat, because we all suffer from the same affliction, but it's so different. There really is. As much as it is exactly the same, it is so different. And I know that for people struggling with methamphetamine, it's really tough. Phoenix, I would say this: very oftentimes, if you say, hey, there's a group of people that really care about you, he's going to want to hit you in the head with a shovel, because at that point, you know, when you're really sort of in that anhedonia, that's the last thing in the world you want to hear. But if he ever does reach a point where, you know, you can just say to him, if you want to reach out to people, they'll be happy to talk to you. And you're definitely, number one, never going to get judged here at all. We don't judge anybody for any reason. We know we've all been there. There's nobody here that doesn't get it. And my email, Mark's email, they're both in the Dropbox. If he ever gets to the point he wants to talk to somebody, have him reach out and put it on in the background. Let him listen to it once or twice.
That's a great.
Because
I was going to say
you
the
know,
same thing.
don't pressure anybody into listening or anything else. But I have heard great stories of people who said, you know, my girl listened to it for 2 weeks, and it was always in the background. You know, you guys droning on about caring for one another and all of this stuff. And, you know, eventually
It works though, guys. It really does.
Exactly. Eventually, it starts to happen.
And it's not, you know, it's not like trying to get around what a person's true thoughts are. It's not about that. It's just some people, and I think all of us at some level, we do question highly when we come across channels like ours. We, you know, it's a natural thing for us. Are they really being real? What's that guy on there telling everybody he loves them every time he sees them and you don't even know him? I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean, that really, you know, it cracks me up. It's funny when you hear it, but you know what? We don't even think twice about that anymore, do we, Tommy?
No, I get really bummed out if I don't hear it.
Well, I told Flamin earlier, I was like, man, I said, I can always look forward to a smile coming here, because I know you're going to say, hey, Wages, I love you. I know that's coming as soon as I pop on here. So it's amazing how people, you know, but I do understand that most people can't grasp the fact that somebody could, you know, be that giving of themselves. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why is because our world is just not that way. But let me tell you something, guys. We're not the world. This is different. This is different.
No, this is definitely different. I got a couple of good ones here, too. Niall said, the brain is badly affected by any addiction. Sometimes irrecoverably. I cannot say that word. I've never been able to say that word. I'm a public speaker, and I cannot say that word. Beyond repair. That is what I mean. I cannot pronounce that word. I got a block with that, and the other one is coin toss. If I don't say that really slow, I screwed up. But sometimes the brain will do amazing things in sobriety. It will introduce you to yourself. People, if that's not one of the most profound things, because that's exactly what will happen.
Who said that?
You will reach a point in your sobriety, that's Niall.
No,
you will reach a point in
me.
sobriety where your brain will literally introduce you to yourself. And that's, it's one of those feelings that is incredible. Michelle, I too was on gabapentin for several years. Gabapentin brings on anhedonia. Mark is right. It is one of those drugs. They use it for seizures. They use it for nerve pain. The reason they use it for nerve pain is because it numbs you. I mean, honestly, that's what the reason. It was not designed for that purpose, but they found it as an aside that it works well for that, and it does. But there are some side effects, and one of them is that it just sort of, exactly,
dude.
sort of yeah, just sort of dopey.
I can't tell
Not
you.
even really like a buzz, but just
No, you just don't care.
you just don't care.
It's like you're not there. Honestly, it's really what it's like. It's like an out of body, like just, but you know you're there, and it's like it's not like an enjoyment thing either, guys. There's no euphoria with what I'm talking about.
No, it's not fun.
No, it's not. And let me say this too before we go much further with this. Please refer back to our disclaimer. We're not doctors, so please understand that. Always talk to your doctors, guys. I mean, there are legitimate reasons like pain for neurotin.
No question.
Yeah.
No question.
And
Mark makes a good point, because one of the other crazy things about Neurontin, and I am not a doctor either, but one of the things about Neurontin was it was very abused inside the prison system to the point where they removed it from the formulary so you could no longer get it. And the guys would take ludicrous amounts of it, that usually you don't see it written much more than about 3,600 milligrams a day. There were guys in there taking, storing it up and taking 5,000 and 6,000 milligrams. And at that point, they're getting some kind of a narcotic feeling off of it. But what I found odd was it was one of those drugs that when I took it, I could continue to take less of it and get the same effect, as opposed to having a tolerance that almost had a reverse tolerance.
Yeah.
Like when I first started taking it, 300 milligrams did nothing. But after being on it a long time, I could feel 300 milligrams and it would have an effect on me. I would just talk to your doctor and tell him what's going on. Say, you know what, I'm not really feeling much emotion. I think the term was anhedonia. And see what he says, she says. They may back you off a little bit, and experiment with a smaller dose, because you may get the pain relief without
the benefits,
side effects,
without the side
effects.
Talk to
your doctor. Please talk to your doctor.
That is one drug I will say though, guys, that when we talk about the word titrate, typically we're talking about coming down. That is a drug that they will titrate you up.
Right.
That's what they did for me, because they don't know what level you need. And that's the whole thing. And it's all going to come down to you. But again, I'm not a doctor. I don't want to give that kind of advice, but I was on that drug. And let me tell you why I was on that drug. It's because my pain doctor, it was when all the stuff started first going down, and they started cutting things in half, and they were trying to get you off the opiates. So I have to say, and I want to clarify this because just for full transparency, I was taking more of it than what I should have. I mean, I'm just being honest there. He was prescribing stuff, and I was still trying to get high off of it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I found. But once I realized it wasn't going to give me the euphoria, I quit doing that and started taking it like I was supposed to, and it still had that anhedonia effect. It really did. And like I said, what really woke me up to that was the fact that my grandpa passed away, and I never cried. That's not me. I'm a very emotional person. I mean, just ask my wife. She's the one that sits there and what the heck you crying for? It's just a freaking commercial.
Right.
Well, that kid over there did something really cool to his mom.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's my personality. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. But when I wasn't like that was when I was doing that. And yeah, but there are legitimate reasons, guys. Okay, for those kinds of drugs. They're there for a reason, and I think that's true even when we talk about opiates or anything, or even like Adderall, which is essentially meth. There's
Right.
legitimate reasons for people to take that stuff.
Well, and we're technically, if you stick around long enough, it will you'll really get a handle on this. But we're really not an anti-drug show. We're an anti-addiction show.
Yep.
I know people that. I know people who drink, and it is not an issue in their life. And I know people that smoke pot, and it is not an issue in their life. I know people who do other drugs, not an issue in their life. I can't do any drug, or it will be an issue in my life, because that's who I am. And there are people who say, well, it's an addictive personality. You can call it whatever you want, but I can get addicted to something before the end of the show if I start on it right now.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, we're pretty much there.
That's
We're at the top of the hour. But so quickly, I'm just one of those people.
Yeah, I think that's just part of our personalities, guys. Let's face it,
Yep.
we are a little different than the rest of the world. I'm sorry. I know it's
No
hard to say
question.
sometimes, but it's the truth.
Well, and the perfect example is this, people. So we've got roughly, I don't know, because mine never updates correctly, but I'm guessing we got 20 to 30 people that are currently in the chat. If you take air quotes, normal, right? People, and you've got 30 of them. And I said, have any of you ever heard of gabapentin? You might have one of them that has heard of it. I have seen 4 people in the chat who say, I'm on gabapentin. Mark was on it. I was on it, right? That's 6 that I've seen. If you do the percentage on that, obviously, one of the reasons that this is given is because as we try to get people off of things like opiates and other drugs that are stronger, they're looking for some other way to treat pain that isn't going to be narcotic and isn't going to have, that same kind of an addictive property. But one of the reasons that most people end up on it is because, if you've got to trade one for the other, it's probably a much better, a much better trade-off than would be, say, being addicted to, hydrocodone or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But as always, talk to your doctor, because if those side effects are happening, either maybe try something else. And believe it or not, people, there are other things.
There's a lot out there, guys.
There was a lot out there. At one point, it was just pregabalin and gabapentin. Now there's actually a whole family
line
of
them.
drugs.
Yep.
Yeah. So talk to your doctor, right? And never, by the way, don't quit taking anything until you talk to your doctor, right?
Exactly. No, and
we're not telling anybody to stop.
Thank for legality and all that kind of stuff. We really want you guys to do that. It's not something that you should be. It's your health that you're talking about there, and you can't make drastic changes without talking to the health professional. You shouldn't do any of that ever. And I know that that's a lot easier said than done when we're talking to a room full of addicts, right? Or recovering addicts or alcoholics or anything that we're talking about here. But yeah. But anyway, we are at the top, guys. I don't want to keep jabbing around here. So
okay. Tomorrow night, people, it's going to be Wednesdays with Niall. You know the drill. To all of the new people here, I saw Phoenix, I saw Mark Webb. I don't think was new today. He was here yesterday, but Mark, welcome to the boat. If I didn't say that, really glad that you're here. I really am. To all the new people, so happy that you're here. Your family. Sounds like a cliche, right? Stick around. It's not a cliche. We really are a very, very different group of people here, and you'll find that. In fact, where's Flamin' Jackson when I need him? Jackson, tell these people you love them, please. All right, everybody. I will be back tomorrow night. So will Mark. So will Niall. Between now and then, do us all a favor and reach out and try to save somebody. It's what we do. I am Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
And hold on one sec because she's caught up. Okay, here we go. And this, people, is a cat in a basket. Good night, everybody.